It is my task today to first find the clicker. Is to give you an overview of the strategies, tools and resources that State Schools Performance Curriculum Teaching and Learning Literacy team have put together, and we're going to also look at how we have used our partnership with the Institute to drive, confirm and inform our resource development. And I'll also spend a bit of time looking at the tools resources. And I realise that our focus is on writing today, but the name of the session is improving reading and writing. So I will just allude to a couple of reading resources that are out in State Schools land as well. So our work is aligned to the Every Student Succeeding State Schools strategy, and as a system we're focused on improvement of student learning through A to E data, and our team is particularly interested in how a focus of literacy within the curriculum can have an impact on student achievement. We acknowledge that every learning area and subject has its own literacy to master and that all teachers teach literacy. Oh, there we go. This is a diagram of our school improvement hierarchy, and our team's work rests mostly in those middle domains of systematic curriculum delivery, effective pedagogical practices and expert teaching teams. And schools can sometimes use this hierarchy to steer decision making around improvement of literacy in their school. So the department does have a long-term writing improvement strategy, and it includes our partnership with the Institute. Please forgive me, I'm just saying the Institute because I recognise it as the LSIA, so I'm just saying the Institute for Learning Sciences and Teacher Education. We're interested in building the knowledge and understanding of the quality teaching of writing, and that's within the Australian curriculum, and to help build the capability of teachers to continue to effectively teach writing. The research partnership with the Institute helped strengthen teachers' knowledge about the features of writing within the learning areas, and as well as the alignment of the Australian curriculum, the achievement standards, and the P to 10 literacy continuum, which is a tool that I will describe later on. Last year, we developed the projects Getting Kids Writing One Sentence at a Time and Improving Writing in English Years 7 to 10 Toolkit. And School Improvements has a statewide inquiry called Third Quarter Counts in Year 9 Writing. Our next phase is the Improving Writing Strategy for Years 5 to 9, which is informed and by the research we have done with the Institute. So the findings, we're also really interested in the connections between the reading and writing, and we understand that the research around that is very important for us, as well as that increasingly complex skill of the reading, viewing and composing of digital multimodal text. So that is informing our work as well. So the findings of the Australian Writing Survey were invaluable for us. They helped to drive, to confirm and also inform our resource development and the support we provide state schools teachers. So moving forward in the Improving Writing Strategy, we're going to provide explicit support around modelling writing, around providing purposeful feedback and aligning a rigorous curriculum and its embedded literacy demands. But today we're going to look at some of our strategies, tools and resources that already exist, and they build on a shared meta-language. We were talking about having a shared meta-language about writing, teacher preparation about how to monitor students' writing, and also plan to teach the literacy demands of the curriculum. This diagram refers to the 6 core messages underpinning our Moving Literacy Forward P12 background paper, and that is drawn from Australian and international research on leading significant literacy improvement in schools. I will just quickly read them out because I'm not sure how easy that is to see. So these core messages drive our work: a focus on literacy within the curriculum, teach the literacy demands of the curriculum, understand quality literacy teaching, monitor students' literacy progress regularly, provide regular feedback, and build a whole school approach to improving literacy. So this is what underpins all of our work as well, and it can also help schools refine their focus, because an activity we do is ask schools which of these core messages they're doing well, which core messages are they working on, and maybe which core messages may they need to address. We also look at what the quality teaching of writing entails, and we know, and it was confirmed from the previous presentation, that we need to make time for writing, and like any activity that needs to develop, we need to allocate time for that. And I guess at this point it's interesting to say, what are we asking students to write as well? Are we asking them to do secretarial work by copying down something from a book or a board, or are we providing a rich quality writing activity? We need to know our learners, and that means knowing how they feel about their own writing and also how they feel about being taught writing. So that's an important aspect. We know we need to establish a positive and motivating writing environment. So we value risk-taking and problem-solving in writing, and we also talk about writing. We know we need to set specific and clear goals for students to work towards, and we know that writing is taught best when it's modelled, scaffolded and supported through to independent practice. Setting that practice in a student's learning zone and providing them with timely and purposeful feedback. And we also know that writing is best taught within the curriculum. And this is the idea of learning to write and writing to learn. Another consideration is that in any activity, students will be working in their comfort, learning or panic zone. And as teachers, we are trying to take students from where they currently are to working on new skills and processes. So the skills will be just out of reach, and they're not coasting in their comfort zone, and they're not panicking either, because that can lead to anxiety and hinder their progress. Another consideration about that is that we as teachers are always in one of these zones as well, and a consideration would be, how can we create a positive environment for teachers to teach writing? So this is our Literacy P12 site, and it is where all of our resources and projects are housed on the Learning Place. It's where you can find the Moving Literacy Forward background paper. It's where you can find hard copies of the P10 Literacy Continuum and the teaching ideas and demonstrations, and I will go into this a little bit more shortly. And our projects such as the Getting Kids Writing One Sentence at a Time and some One School advice as well. So in the Action Now report that Claire and Christine mentioned earlier, there was a need for teachers to have a comprehensive repertoire of evidence-based strategies and approaches to teach and select and apply to meet individual learning needs. So this is one example of how the department tries to do that, and it's with our online coaching modules. This shot is of the How to Teach Writing module, but there are also modules for reading, mathematics, science, and how to assess learning and use evidence to differentiate. These are available to any Queensland registered teacher, and also the learning pathways have been set up for Queensland universities to obtain direct access to these modules. And I probably need to say out loud, copyright conditions with the content of the modules mean that they cannot be made available to any other parties. But if you are using this online coaching model, these are the episodes you would be moving forward through, and you can have set it up so that you have a supervisor who assists you go through them. The next example is our Getting Kids Writing One Sentence at a Time. So the broad aims of this project were to increase and improve student writing, and that was in response to a decline in NAPLAN writing. It's an 8-part series with strategies on manageable chunks of writing, so it works through sentence level to paragraph level to extended text, and it does go on the idea that if a student can't write a simple sentence, then why are we asking them to write paragraphs? So it kind of uses that, it's informed by Hockman and Wexler's The Writing Revolution in part. So the resources that we created for that were part resources, part presentations of how to implement the resources within the curriculum, and there's an open access ed studio that state schools have access to get in, and it's been quite successful so far. I guess that talks a little to that negative progression of sentence structure over the years. So these are the strategies that we use. There's involved in each of the sentence level, paragraph level and extended text include quite a bit of time for pre-writing and editing as well. We encourage schools to engage with this project to suit their context. So if they need to spend more time at the sentence level, then that's fine. It was also aimed at years 2 to 9, so we realised that that context is going to mean some strategies will be more useful. We also look at the importance of reading to write. So the idea of a reader to read as a writer, and that's sharing and discussing examples of text as a writer to consider what's been written in the text. So it's had a lot of feedback, and we're always welcoming more people to join in. Now I will go into our P10 literacy continuum and the related resources. So the P10 literacy continuum is a tool that in 2015 the Queensland Department of Education purchased a perpetual licence from the New South Wales Department, and it describes the development of literacy, knowledge, skills and strategies typically expected of most students from Prep to 10 in 8 areas identified as critical to literacy progress. The continuum focuses on capturing the literacy connections that are critical to success and are applicable to all learning areas and subjects. It's been informed by an extensive range of international and Australian studies, reports and research. And since acquiring the continuum, we have developed support materials that help teachers engage in using the continuum in their curriculum planning and to monitor students' literacy progress to plan next steps teaching. And I guess it gives that idea of cohesion across the years. Now, the licence agreement for the continuum means we can only share it with Queensland State Schools, but that doesn't prevent us from explaining the concepts behind it and how we can apply it to quality teaching practice. So some of the important things to note about the continuum. It's a literacy tool for all the learning areas, and all teachers are literacy teachers. It's used to monitor, plan and teach the identified literacy skills in the curriculum. And it is not used for A to E reporting assessment. I can't stress that more firmly. So it is, however, aligned to the Australian curriculum and the general capability of literacy. And I might speak to the relation to the national literacy and numeracy progressions. So our messaging is that while the department supports the progressions, it already provides state schools with extensive literacy support and resources through the P10 literacy continuum and the literacy P12 site resources. So another very important facet is that it's not a checklist. I always say it's not like a computer game where you have to get every marker before you go to the next level. It's also optional, and schools should choose how to engage with it to suit their context. So they might choose just 1 or 2 critical aspects of literacy, or they might use it with certain year levels or cohorts, but it should suit their context. And again, it's licensed only to Queensland State Schools, so I need to keep to that today. But I can describe how it is set up. So the fundamentals is on the column with the coloured rows. Is that the left or the right? It's the left. On your left, they are the critical aspects, and on the top row is the clusters from 1 to 16 that relate to the year levels in the bottom row. So you'll see that prep takes up cluster 1 to 4. You'll also note that for most of these critical aspects, they do go through 1 to 16, except for the bottom 3, and that is because, and that is because those 3 phonics, phonemic awareness and concepts about print are constrained skills. So once you have them, you've got them. And by the end of year 2, you shouldn't be having to go over that. Maybe there would be cause to revisit in certain circumstances, but essentially they're integrated into the other aspects. And the top 5 aspects are called unconstrained skills because we continue to develop these throughout our lives. So the hard copy of the continuum looks like that, and the critical aspects are in that first column, and the clusters go across the row. The clusters also suggest what year level students should be working towards, so it gives you an idea. So in those clusters are bullet points, and they are called markers, and they describe behaviours of literacy within that cluster. And they are not hierarchical, but you sometimes can see that development from cluster to cluster. Now, for each of the critical aspects and for each cluster, we have developed teaching ideas and demonstrations. In Peter 2 and 3 to 6, there's one set of teaching ideas per cluster. In 7 to 10, we have developed teaching ideas for different learning areas. So there are teaching ideas for maths, science, history, music, visual arts, digital technologies, geography, and that is to suggest to learning areas other than English that there is possible to teach the literacy of their learning area. So they're all on our Literacy P12 site as well. And it would be probably very important to say that these are not comprehensive teaching ideas. They are written to inspire teachers to come up with their own. Now, in one school, we have the literacy continuum, and we're very excited because it's a functionality that has colour, and these colours represent the critical aspects on the hard copy. So you will notice that the critical aspect in this individual student view has a number with some brackets at the end. That indicates the student's highest recorded cluster. Now, as I mentioned, you do not need to get every marker as you go along, so there could be a few markers in different clusters below that, but that will be the highest cluster that that individual student is working on. So if you expand that, it will open up to the markers, and there's a few indicators there. The highest recording cluster will be in that middle column. If a student doesn't have any data in there already, it will go to the cluster that it is expected to be working on. There's a little ES icon as well, because that is related to our early start suite of tasks. And I'll just explain that briefly in a minute. We also have some green arrows which will navigate up and down the clusters. You can also have a look at it from a class, cohort, year level view, and there's reports that you can generate that give you a really good idea of where to next for students. Another really great view that we have is our student progress tracker. This is a new functionality which shows the students' literacy progress from semester to semester. Again, you have the colour-coded dots. You also have an indicator for where the student is expected to be working towards by that time. This is a little bit deeper than the highest recorded cluster information, because you can see, perhaps you can see, hopefully you can see, this student from this semester to this semester has stayed at the same cluster, but there's a little white indicator suggesting that they've added markers within that same cluster. So if you can actually filter this down to look at one critical aspect or or however many you want. So it builds quite a rich picture of a student's literacy progress. And our department has the Early Start suite, and if schools are doing Early Start, then and they're entering those results in one school, then they are automatically migrated to the literacy continuum. We also have an upcoming functionality which is really exciting, and it's a collection tool. So you can set up an item in one school. Perhaps you're looking at the literacy demands of an assessment task, and you're picking some markers that you're going to explicitly teach, and then you will have the ability to bulk mark. So select all and then deselect the students that haven't demonstrated it. So that is exciting, and it also communicates that message that we're looking for, teaching the literacy of the curriculum. Okay, so these are two approaches that we have for using the P to 10 literacy continuum that we suggest schools use. One is to monitor individual students, and then there's a really easy way to include it in curriculum planning time. So the first one is to look at that monitoring an individual student. So whether students are reading, writing, speaking or listening, you can monitor what they're doing by looking at the literacy continuum. And when teachers are using the literacy continuum to monitor individuals, we suggest that they go to the cluster that the student would be expected to be working towards. Now, if they are demonstrating some of those markers, then we would suggest move upwards and see if they're demonstrating any more. If they aren't demonstrating those markers, perhaps look lower down and see what you can monitor in that student. Now, that is a really great way to build a picture of your students' literacy progress and where they should be going to next. But it's really time consuming, and I can't imagine having to do that for every student. We also, one of our main messages is that we want teachers to set specific and clear goals for students. So unless you are setting those clear goals, there's a more effective way to do this. And that is by looking at what is the literacy of the curriculum. So to look at the next unit of work and look at your teaching and learning sequence and look at your assessment task and ask, what are students going to need to do? And that way, if teaching teams get together and do that scan of the work that way, we're already on the front foot because we're starting to think, what does my student need? So teaching teams can use the curriculum planning time, and we have a little bit of resources to support that. We call this placing a literacy lens over curriculum planning. So you scan an assessment task and you consider what writing demands are included in the assessment task, when will this be taught, and what writing skills will students need to succeed. We have made some templates. They're not rocket science or anything, but they are helpful for teaching teams to identify salient markers in assessment tasks or episodes in teaching and learning sequence. So if teachers agree, again, we're getting that shared meta language, agree on the salient literacy markers that they will focus on, and they can go to the teaching ideas to get some ideas and generate how they might do it. And then through monitoring and giving feedback, then you can actually start to monitor individual students that way. So we have a flow chart for this. So when a student gives in a draft, the first thing you need to pay attention to is your GTMJ. That's the most important part. But then to put that literacy lens over and see whether the salient markers are there, and you can provide some feedback to students about that. When they hand in their final draft, again, looking at that GTMJ and getting your A to E, and then scanning, did they demonstrate those salient markers? If they did, then you can record that in one school, and if they didn't, that would be the time to do your individual monitoring, and that's when you start targeting teaching for those students. Oh, this is great, because there's only a few minutes left. And now I'm just going to allude to a few of the reading resources. So again, we have a How to Teach Reading online coaching module, very similar access to the How to Teach Writing. We also have Teaching Reading in Queensland State Schools website, and this is a central platform for Queensland Education Department reading resources for teachers, and it supports the notion that all teachers are teachers of reading. So the website is based around the 4 key considerations for effective teaching of reading: know your curriculum, know your students, know your next steps, and know your teaching practices. And it also relates to the C2C Reading Centre and Peter 10 Literacy Continuum resources. And finally, we also have the Reading Motivation and Engagement Toolkit, which uses Guthrie's model of reading development to look at reading engagement and motivation, classroom instruction and teaching practice, reading motivation, reading skills and understanding, and reading engagement. And finally, if you need any support in literacy, please feel very free to get in touch with myself, Pascalle Burton, or Anne Schaefer, our director. And thank you very much for your time.